Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Thanks, Allan. This is David Brower with our special guest today, Brian Bergford of just down the road from me in Thornton, Colorado. Brian is a peak performance coach at Bergford Performance, specializing in helping motivated athletic business owners gain the tools to take their businesses and their lives further. He's focused on creating powerful psychology and mindsets, which is colored by a depth of experience across a number of disciplines. Brian, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here, man.
Oh, thank you very much. I am very excited to be here with you.
So, a number of disciplines. I mean, you're tell me about that. You're doing everything from climbing to dog training to inspiring professionals. What's all the things you're involved in right now?
Yeah, so I guess I would take it back a little ways and kind of walk through how I arrived here.
Great.
In college, I studied psychology, and that's sort of my background is the human aspect, because I've always been tremendously fascinated by the mind and the power that has to either be our best friend or potentially our worst enemy,
right,
depending on how we use it. And so I've always been sort of obsessed with human performance and potential. And what's interesting is back years ago now, close to like a decade, I found that I had, and this was like actually in college, a gift for working with animals as well, specifically dogs. And so I began just sort of organically working with some people to help them through some issues, behavior problems, whatever was going on. And that grew over time to the point where it took over sort of and became a full-time gig for me. And so I left the corporate world and built up a couple successful businesses in that industry, a training and behavior rehab company, as well as a dog boarding daycare facility, and got those to the point where I had people managing them, built some success there so that I was able to kind of go revisit my first love, which was working with and coaching people. And it ties into the dog training thing, because when I'm training dogs, I'm not actually training dogs. I am coaching people in how to train their own dogs and kind of communicating that message to them. And what's interesting is I wrote a book called Transformational Dog Training a few years ago, and it went over, it's basically a self-help book for dog owners, talking about the way that they interact with their dogs and the way they live, and everything from just their energy and their lifestyle can have a profound impact on some of the issues that might be cropping up for people in terms of behavior problems. And so, again, kind of tying that into the human performance aspect, what I wanted to be able to do with Bergford Performance Systems, and what I've been able to do, is focus very specifically on the people psychology and be able to do a much deeper dive with folks, specializing again in CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, high-level executives that also compete in some form of athletics, which could be running, it could be swimming, it could be triathlons, it could be those Spartan races, any number of things.
Sure.
And so I've really enjoyed that. And of course, the reality is I'll work with anybody that's a high-performing person that is really looking for an extra edge to kick it into high gear.
So it seems like when you throw in the athletic aspect, it seems like a fairly small niche, a very nuanced niche. Is that fair, or do people just come out of the woodwork and find you? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is sort of a niche, and the reason I play in that space is because I'm a business owner, and I am a competitive athlete myself. I compete in swimming, and I absolutely love that, and so I just relate really well to it. And there's really a tremendous number of people out there that actually do fit within that. I agree with you. It's very much a niche, but it's such a pleasure to serve sort of that psychographic, if you will, and work with clients that are there's a certain mindset that comes with somebody who's competing not only in business, but in sport, and really pushing themselves, not just as leaders, but their own bodies and their personal leadership as well. And that's really what it all kind of comes down to, is personal leadership, because that is what allows us to max our potential, or it's going to be sort of the bottleneck on things, depending on how we conduct that.
So how did you turn your fear of water into competitive swimming? That's got to be fascinating.
Yeah. Took a while. So when I was really young, my parents were great. They took me to swim lessons, and I had complete meltdowns at the pool. And I think a lot of kids do have a fear of the water, right? It's just fear of the unknown. It's kind of a scary thing initially, but mine was unreasonable. It wasn't just a little bit of angst. It was a legitimate phobia. It was completely irrational fear of being submersed in water. And so I did not really make any progress in swimming lessons other than running out of the pool, screaming and crying.
Sure.
And when I got older, kind of post, the 2008 Olympics, I think, in Beijing, this was a little bit of the spark and the seed, as I saw Michael Phelps do what he did there. And that was so awe-inspiring to me, because, again, I love that. I love people performing at their potential, whether that's athletes or artists, or I don't care. It's just incredibly inspiring. And that was a little bit of a spark, and also just the desire in me to not be a person where my fear was dictating what I was and was not going to do. So I was like, the heck with it. I'm going to take up swimming, and got some swim lessons. Long story short, grew into competing with, or swimming on a master's team, eventually competing. And I mean, I love it now. Now it's a great passion of mine, and got back about a month ago from my second national championship competition, which it was just an honor to have qualified to go.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
so excited.
Congratulations.
So,
that's
thank you.
My wife gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning, goes and swims with a master's group, and she'll swim 3,500 yards just because she wants to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I
she's
remember,
60, and she's 65.
That is fantastic. I remember seeing some masters swimming workouts years ago, and when I saw them, I thought people were exaggerating in terms of the number of yards they were swimming, the lack of rest between sets, because swimmers, we don't really rest a lot. If you get 10 seconds after you've swam 100 or 200 yards or meters, or what, that is a lot of downtime for a swimmer. And it was just hard for me to even comprehend that in the beginning. But it's amazing, and kudos to her. That's great. I love it.
Well, and your experience with that, and I'm sure other things, because we all have some fears along the way that hopefully we figure out a way to conquer them so they don't tear us down too much. And I'm sure you've had some other fears that can share those kinds of stories with your clientele and let them know that they're not alone with their fears either, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it really is, anytime we want to grow and expand, I don't care who the person is, it boils down to there's going to be some level of fear of the unknown that we have to move through to get, obviously, to the next level. And that is a process for people that really, really want to stretch the edges of what they were created to be. That is an ongoing process. It's not something you do and you're like, whew, thank God that's over. It happens again and again. And it's just that process of kind of breaking out of the cocoon and sort of spreading your proverbial wings. And then after a while, you realize I'm in another cocoon, and you learn to build your wings even stronger, but you have to push through. And it's just part of the human condition.
Well, fear of the unknown that's a real deal. Whether it's in business, whether it's athleticism, whether it's health. I mean, most of us, knock on wood, can figure out a way to handle a lot of situations as long as we can eliminate the fear part. So we have something to focus on, something to think about, something to have a plan for. Yeah, that fear is just numbing. Yeah,
and that's the art of it, right? The people that really break through and continue to progress in their lives and achieve the goals and the visions that they set for themselves are incredibly adept, in my experience, at encountering fear and knowing how to deal with it. This notion that somehow there's people, or maybe they're, either incredible business owners that are tremendously accomplished, or they're elite athletes. The idea that they don't experience fear somehow magically just isn't the case, but they are very adept, again, at knowing how to address the fear and how to process that stress and turn it into something that they can effectively use.
Absolutely. Now, you do a lot of one-on-one coaching, a lot of public speaking. What do you find more gratifying, or are they just different?
That's great. They're different. They're both tremendously gratifying for different reasons. The interesting thing about speaking to groups of people for me is there are a couple things. One is the group dynamic that comes into play. There's something about that that's very exciting, and you can only get it when there's a collection of people, that group momentum that you can build, and you can reach people at a larger scale that way.
Sure.
The one-on-one work, the beauty of it is we can get into real deep dives, and we can go right to the heart of the matter, customize things for that individual, and absolutely create changes at a much more profound level, because we can kind of go through different layers and find out exactly what they need. So that's more of a depth issue, where the speaking engagements is a matter of scale.
So, and I'm sure, I don't want to assume, but I would think that the speaking engagements bring you some one-on-one opportunities, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, because you never really know who it's going to be, right?
Right.
You can't look out at a group of people and pick, like it's going to be them. Even if you happen to speak with them at the event, it's fascinating to me who kind of raises their hand and says, I want to take things further, and I know to do that I need some coaching, or I can cut way back on the amount of time it's going to take me to get to where I want to go through getting coaching. But it's so interesting. You really can't pick it. You just have to kind of sit back and watch and see who comes into the fold and is hungry.
Well, it has to be, I would think, a couple of things. One, it has to be organic, and number two, they have to shake a bit of fear just to raise their hand.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all of a sudden, I raised my hand. I got skin in the game. Now what am I going to do?
That's part one of our interview with Brian Bergford. Your 20-minute podcast with David Brower has been brought to you by Audible. You can listen to any of David's podcasts anywhere podcasts can be found, including iHeartRadio, the Spotify mobile app, and at davidbrowervo.com/your20-minute podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.